And now for the introduction. For the definition of income inequality is that uneven distribution of a nation's total income among its household. Its disparity is fundamentally analyzed through the lens of factor income, primarily the division between returns to labor, wages and salaries, and returns to capital, profits, rents, and interest. Economic growth refers to the expansion of an economy's productive capacity over time, measured by the increase in real GDP. This growth is driven by the accumulation of factors of production and more sustainably by technological progress that boosts productivity. A closely related metric is real GDP per capita, which serves as a key indicator for the average standard of living. And now we have the relationship between income inequality and economic growth. The relationship between income inequality and economic growth is crucial for Malaysia's future, as it sits at the crossroads of becoming a high-income nation. The nation has a historical legacy of ethnic-based inequality, addressed for decades by policies like the New Economic Policy. Understanding how current growth patterns affect this social compact is vital for national cohesion. From an economic standpoint, high or rising inequality can be a drag on long-term growth. If the benefits of Malaysia's export-led growth and foreign direct investments are concentrated among a small segment, it can suppress aggregate demand as a larger portion of the population has less disposable income to spend. This can also limit human capital development. Poorer households may be unable to invest in education, perpetuating a cycle of lower skills and productivity. And now for the overview. Malaysia's economy demonstrates a resilient and dynamic profile, positioned as one of Southeast Asia's most advanced. It has successfully transitioned from a commodity-based economy reliant on palm oil and natural gas to a diversified one, powered by robust manufacturing exports, particularly in electronics and electrical goods, and a growing services factor. Key drivers include strong foreign direct investment, FDI, and a strategic position in global supply chains. However, the post-pandemic recovery has been nuanced. While headline GDP growth has been strong, the nation faces external headwinds like global inflationary pressures and a slower than expected recovery in its major trading partners, notably China.
Next is the relationship between income inequality and economic growth. I will start with the Kuznets curve hypothesis. The relationship between income inequality and economic growth can be explained using the Kuznets invert U hypothesis. This hypothesis shows that inequality initially increases as economic growth begins, then reaches a peak and eventually declines as development continues. However, many developing countries experience economic growth while still facing high level of inequality, especially in countries with weak globalization, limited technology, and poor institutional infrastructure. Next, I will explain the Keynesian and neoclassical perspective. From the Keynesian perspective, higher income inequality tends to slow economic growth. This is because income is concentrated among higher income groups who have lower marginal propensity to consume. As a result, overall demand decreases and short-term economic growth is negatively affected. In contrast, from the neoclassical perspective, income inequality is seen as precondition for economic growth. Inequality encourages capital accumulation, higher investment, and long-run economic growth. However, when poorer individuals are credit constrained and unable to invest in education, skill, or entrepreneurship, inequality can instead reduce economic growth. Moving on to the mechanism linking inequality and growth. First, in terms of saving and investment, richer individuals are able to invest more and accumulate wealth faster. In contrast, inequality limits investment at the micro level and reduces investment in human capital among low-income individuals. Next, persistent inequality affects investment in human capital formation. Poor families often lack access to education and training, causing individuals to remain trapped in a cycle of poverty and further weakening human capital development. Next, regarding innovation, inequality may encourage risk-taking and innovative activity. However, large inequality gaps reduce motivation to engage in cognitive development and innovation. Finally, inequality affects political and social stability. High level of inequality can threaten social order, stability, and social cohesion, while moderate levels of inequality may support positive social integration. Lastly, I will explain the effect of inequality on economic growth. Overall, the effect of inequality on growth is ambiguous because it depends on the inequality-related factors present in an economy. Therefore, the direction of the relationship depends on a country's institutional structure, and stage of economic development.
Good afternoon. Today I will discussing factor of income inequality in Malaysia. Despite our country impressive economic growth, income is still not distributed evenly. The Department of Statistics report that our Gini coefficient has barely improved, meaning that the gap between rich and poor remains significant. This inequality is driven by four main pillars, that is education, vocation, regional development, and the labor market. So let's start with the most critical one. Education is supposed to be a great equalizer, but currently it is widening the gap. Data show that nearly 60 for our 15 years old that not meet minimum competence standard. This is critical because high-paying job in Malaysia require degree. The gap is also furthered by students for top 25% of families score 82 point higher in math than those from the bottom. Furthermore, while students attend school for 11 years, the World Bank estimate they only get 8.9 years of actual learning. The pandemic makes this more worse, causing a 1.6-year learning loss specifically for poor students who lack the digital accesses. Next is talk about the location. In the Malaysia, where you live determine that where you earn. In 2022, urban households earn a median of roughly RM 7,200, nearly double the RM 4,000 earning by the rural household. We see this disparity across states too. A family in Selangor earn nearly RM 10,000, while a family in Kelantan just earn over the RM 3,600. Regarding the ethnicity, the Chinese households remain the top earning at the RM 8,100, followed by Indian and the Bumiputra households. However, the data does show a positive trend because this is specific ethnic gap has been slowly closing since 1970. Finally, the labor market. As our economy shift from the agriculture to the service, it's created a massive wage divide. Today, a manager earns a median of RM 5,990, when an elementary worker earns just RM 2,602. The market heavily reward high skill and leave low skill worker behind. So income inequality in Malaysia is structural. It's not just about wage. It's just about the unequal access to quality education and the massive development gap between our states. To fix the income gap, we need first fix this structural divide.
In this session, we analyze the impact of income inequality on economic growth. There is a classical view that argues inequality is beneficial because the wealthy save more and these savings fund investment. However, we challenge this view because investment relies on consumption. If the majority cannot afford to buy products, businesses will not invest in new factories, no matter how much savings the wealthy have. Therefore, instead of fueling growth, inequality creates a negative feedback loop that undermines Malaysia's potential output. First, let's look at human capital. Even with PTPTN loans, structural challenges remain. PTPTN often fails to cover the full cost of quality education, creating a funding gap for B40 families. But the bigger problem starts after graduation. Due to structural flaws in the labor market, there are insufficient high-skilled jobs available. Simultaneously, the burden of debts creates urgency. Graduates cannot afford to wait for the right job. They are forced to accept low-wage positions immediately just to service their loans. This financial stress prevents them from upskilling. Consequently, our talent pool remains underutilized, effectively trapping the nation in the middle income trap. Secondly, let's examine how inequality dampens aggregate demand. If you look at figure, you see a structural mismatch. Income is stagnant for the bottom 80%, but spike exponentially for the T20. This is economically dangerous due to the marginal propensity of to consume. Economic theory posits that the wealthy save a much larger share of their marginal income compared to the B40 and M40. When national income is concentrated at the top, it effectively leaks out of the consumption cycle. This creates a critical problem. It weakens the multiplier effect even if the government pumps money into the economy. The impact is mute because the money doesn't recirculate enough. Meanwhile, the B40 and M40 who would spend that money face stagnant real wage and rising living costs. This systemic constraint on the domestic consumption acts as a persistent headwind against our GDP expansions. Thirdly, inequality manifests geographically, distorting our investment climate. Figure provides empirical evidence of this imbalance. Just six states contribute a staggering 73.4% to the national GDP, while states like Belize contribute a negligible fraction. This proves that capital is inefficiently concentrated in a few developed hubs, leaving other regions severely undercapitalized. This is not just unfair, it is an inefficient allocation of national resource that limits our productive capacity. Furthermore, such extreme disparities often leads to social unrest and demands for policy reversals. For domestic and foreign investors, this creates policy volatility. It increases the perceived risk and the required rate of return, which ultimately slow down private investment essential for growth. Finally, we must address the systemic financial vulnerability caused by inequality. Figure shows Malaysia's household debt to GDP ratio persistently hovering above 80%. This is largely driven by a need to maintain consumption parity. As wage stagnate, B40 and M40 households are compelled to rely on debt just to cope with the rising cost of living and housing, trying to keep up with the T20. This turns our economy into a brittle structure. Because the debt is high, a minor negative shock, such as a sudden job loss or an interest rate hike, can trigger whisper defaults. This would lead to a credit crunch, a bank instability. Thus, inequality transforms what looks like a social problem into a systemic risk factor that threatens the continuity of our entire economic expansion. This would lead to a credit crunch and bank instability. Those inequality transforms what looks like a social problem into a systemic risk factor that threatens the continuity of our entire economic expansion.
Good morning, Doctor and everyone. Now, I will explain the part 5, which is policy recommendation. In order to reduce the income inequality while sustaining economic growth, Malaysia needs an inclusive and balanced policy approach. This recommendation focus on education, taxation, wages, and social protection and support for small business. First, education and skill development. Education is one of the most effective tools to reduce the income inequality. Students in rural areas, especially in Sabah and Sarawak, continue to face the disadvantage compared to the urban student. Therefore, greater investment in school infrastructure, teacher quality, and digital asset is initial. At the same time, expanding TBET and digital skill training will have much graduate skill with labor market demand and data employment in country. Lifelong learning is also important so workers can adapt to change in the economy. Second, progressive and fair taxation. A fair taxation play a key role in narrowing income gap. While Malaysia already have a progressive income tax system, informant and can be improved, particular for a high income earner. Reintroducing a refined GST together while targeting assistance for low-income households can strengthen government revenue without the bullying vulnerable group. This fund can be then used to expand social and development programs. Third, minimum wages and social protection. Although the minimum wages has a raised income level, reaching living costs require regular review. In the introduction, a region based on minimum wages can better reveal different in the living costs. In additional, expanding social protection in informal and G worker to social and paper will improve the financial security and economy resilience. Finally, the last part, which is supporting SME and increasing entrepreneurship. SME are a major source of job in Malaysia. They are providing financial support, digitalization incentive, and training, and this can help SME grow and create a better quality employment. They also encourage entrepreneurship among women, young, and rural community, and this can further reduce income inequality and provide an increasing growth. Also, the overall, this policy aim to ensure the economic growth in Malaysia is more inclusive and benefit all segments of society. Thank you. Now, I'm going to the part 6, which is conclusion. So, based on the finding of this assignment, income inequality in Malaysia is more than just an income difference. It is caused by the unequal access to education, job opportunity, and uneven regional development. Although Malaysia have experienced economic growth, but the benefit has not been shared equally. And then this assessment also found that inequality can weaken economic growth by reducing the household spending, limiting the development of skilled workforce, and increasing the financial risk for low-income households. Therefore, reducing inequality is very important for Malaysia's long-term development. So policy then improve the education, ensure fair wages and tax, strengthen social protection, and support SMB can help create an inclusive and sustainable growth for all Malaysia. Thank you.